Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Niyi, and I'm here to answer your questions. I was so impressed by the number of questions I received when we put out the post asking for questions. So this is a Q&A session. Ask Dr. Niyi. And I asked for questions from you guys, and I was, as I said, surprised about the number of questions that I received within 1 or 2 hours of the post. I received questions on the brain, on the mind, on leadership, and on all the areas of life, work life balance, and other areas which really impressed me. And so today I will be answering some of the questions. In order to give a bit of focus to this session, I would only be answering questions that relate to the brain and mind today, and I intend to answer the other questions. At a later time, hopefully in the next few days. All right. I received, I think, well over 30 to 40 questions. So I've tried to streamline the questions, and today I'll be answering the questions that really pertain to the brain and the mind. So I'll be putting up the questions. They are all de-identified, but I'm sure you know yourself if you ask the question. So hopefully I'll be able to provide as much clarity to you in this session. So, the first question that I'll be answering, and I think that's actually related to the second question. Okay, the first question goes this way: how do I maximize my brain's potential and its functionality? How do I maximize my brain's potential and its functionality? And the second question is: how can someone nourish the brain to be effective? How can someone nourish the brain to be effective? So I think the two questions are related. How do you maximize your brain's potential and its functionality, and how do you nourish your brain? Now, I'll go straight to the point. Okay. Now, the brain is a very important organ. I can't sort of overemphasize that. The brain relies on about 20 to 30% of all that you of your energy needs. So the brain takes a huge percentage of all the energy that you consume on a daily basis. That's how important the brain is. So the brain is like the CPU of the computer. So the brain is what sort of controls almost everything you do in terms of your automatic systems, your heart, your organs, how they work, and also the choices you make, your cognitive processes, the decisions you make, and what you do. So the brain is really, really essential. So maximizing the capability of the brain is paramount if you're going to be as productive as you can. And the reality is that, yes, you can underuse your brain, you can underutilize the powers of your brain, whether it's in terms of the cognitive part of the brain, in terms of the reasoning, or the emotional part of the brain, which is more of what people would say the emotional your thoughts, your feelings, and that part of the brain which is encoded in the limbic system. So either of these parts of the brain can be developed, can be enhanced. I'm not going to sort of dabble into a lot of specifics now so I don't lose you, but I'm going to give you 5 things that I think you'll find helpful. And this is something that I've also applied to myself, and I found it very helpful. The acronym I'm going to use is called HORNS, 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 HORNS. That's the acronym I'm going to give to you right now, HORNS. I'm going to put that on the screen so that you will get the acronym HORNS. Okay, HORNS, HORNS. Okay, so what does HORNS mean? H means hydration. Hydration. So I'm just talking about general principles that you can apply that will help your brain's functionality improve, or that can make you more efficient when it comes to the utilization of your brain. Number one, hydration. A lot of people underestimate the power, the importance of hydration. Hydration is really, really important. For every 15 kilograms of your body weight, you need to drink at least half a liter of water. So if you weigh, as an average person, maybe 70 to 75 kilograms, you probably will need about 2 to 3 liters of water every day. Now, by hydrating yourself, you allow your brain to get well perfused, because your brain relies on proper hydration for it to work. And what that does is that when your brain is well, when your whole body is well hydrated, your brain's perfusion is at the optimal level, and that way a lot of toxins can be cleared from the brain. So hydration cannot be overemphasized. You've got to drink water as much as you can. That is really, really essential for optimal brain performance. Hydration is not only important, but oxygenation. O for oxygenation. So you got to oxygenate your brain. Your brain relies on oxygen. Your brain consumes a lot of oxygen. And that's why it's very important. If you're going to improve your brain's performance in terms of your memory, your recollection, your critical reasoning, your thinking, your insight, your ability to deduct things, or we call deductive reasoning, abstract thinking, and all that, you need a lot of oxygenation. You need to oxygenate the brain, provide the brain with oxygenation. And I would mention two quick techniques that I think would be very helpful if you're going to oxygenate your brain. Number one, it's deep breathing, learning how to do deep breathing. Deep breathing is very essential, very important when it comes to oxygenating the brain. When you take in deep breaths, it communicates with the brain. You see, the pattern of your breathing communicates with the brain. That's why you realize that when you're stressed and anxious, you have shallower breaths, and sometimes you hold your breath. And that's because when you hold your breath and you have shallow breaths, you flood your system with carbon monoxide. That's a trigger for the brain that you're in trouble. When you start to pant and you start to, hyperventilate, that's a sign for the brain, because you're keeping a lot of carbon dioxide in your body. And by doing that, your brain gets a signal that things are not quite right. And so that's it's a signal for the brain that you're in a stressful situation, or you need to flee. So ultimately, that does not help the brain in terms of your brain's ability to recall things or to produce results. So deep breathing is really important, and that's why you also notice that a lot of exercises that are meant to help with deep relaxation, a lot of exercises that are meant to help with helping you to connect your brain with your body, involve deep breathing. And when you breathe in deeply, you use your diaphragm, you actually allow yourself to also get into a state of relaxation that can help with healing of your body. So oxygenation is really important. Apart from deep breathing, exercise is very important for oxygenation as well, particularly aerobic exercise. And one way of doing that is by, one simple way of doing that is by having as many steps as possible. So the reason why you exercise is not just for weight loss, it's not just for physical fitness, but also for brain fitness. To improve the fitness of your brain, you should exercise. And it doesn't have to be you don't have to go to the gym to, to achieve this. By having about walking for up to 5,000 or 10,000 steps a day, you'll be able to provide enough oxygen for your brain, to function at a very optimal level. Now let me tell you something about aerobic exercise. Every time you exercise and you flood your brain with oxygen, what you're actually doing as well is to stimulate the production of a protein called the brain derived neurotropic factor, BDNF, brain derived neurotropic factor. Now you don't need to remember that detail, but what it does is that it stimulates the production of new neurons in the brain. That's one of the ways of stimulating new neurons in the brain. So if you want to have you want to be very good at retaining things, retaining new information. If you want to learn a new skill, you want to learn a new language, you want to learn something new that you're not familiar with and you think you may struggle with, incorporate in your plan an exercise program, because every time you exercise, you stimulate your brain to produce the brain derived neurotropic factor, which helps with the growth of new neurons. Very, very essential. So H, hydrate; O, oxygenate; R, rest. Rest is essential. Rest is essential. You've got to sleep, 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 sleep. Sleep is very important, because it's in deep sleep that brain repair occurs. When you go into the stage 3, stage 4 sleep, because there are 4 stages of sleep: stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4. Deep sleep is actually stage 3, stage 4 sleep. When you get into deep sleep, you actually cause repair of your brain and consolidation of memories. So all the experiences you've had in the day, all the things you've learned in the day, they get consolidated in deep sleep. So there are connections, new neuronal connections are built and consolidated when you are in deep sleep. That's why it's very important to have adequate sleep. How long should an average person sleep? Well, the recommended sleep duration for an average adult person, man or woman, is 7 to 9 hours, 7 to 9 hours a day. Ideally, about 8 hours a day will be very helpful if you can achieve that. At least 8 hours of sleep every day. And of course, if you're younger, if you're a teenager, an adolescent, you probably need to sleep, to sleep for longer period, number of hours. So it's very important to understand that sleep is important. Have time to rest, have time to calm down. Don't just be on the go, because you're not going to be very efficient. Okay. So hydrate, oxygenate, rest. N is nutrition. You have to make sure you feed well. have a balanced diet, eat well. I'm not a nutrition expert. I'm not going to go into all those details, but make sure that you give yourself enough calories each day. As I said, your brain uses about 20 to 30% of the your energy requirement. So make sure you feed yourself properly, and that you look after yourself in that way. And S is for simplification. And what does that mean? Our brain works efficiently when we simplify things for the brain. When things are simplified, when you put a little bit of organization into the way you do things, you will find yourself more productive. A lot of people struggle because they can't simplify things. You make things too complex. How can you simplify things? Number one, you can have a to-do list. If you want to be efficient, you have a to-do list so that you can remember, you can have, you can have a plan for the day. When you have a structure, it helps your brain function properly. All right, because that's just the way the brain works. Having to-do lists, having journals where you can, which will also help for reflection, is very helpful. Having a clean, tidy place where, even starting from your office table, when it's not cluttered, when everything is well arranged and properly cataloged, is very important. Having a shelf where you can arrange your books, your files, that's really important. Even on your computer, your files are properly arranged into folders and well cataloged. That helps your brain. That helps you to be able to retrieve things, because that's exactly how your brain works. Your brain is very, meticulous about arranging things and grouping things together. You just imagine you go into a shopping center and everything is all over the place. If you want to get a bar of soap of a brand, you get it on aisle A. But if you want to get another bar of soap of a different brand, you'll go to aisle D. No, that's not an efficient way to arrange a store. You will notice in most stores, grocery stores, similar objects are put together, so they're categorized together. So if you want a bar of soap, whether it's Dettol or Premier or Lux or whatever brand of soap, you'll find them in the same section within the store. That's exactly how the brain works. All right. So if you're not very organized person, if you're so disorganized, you're not, you don't have that structure, you will find that you're not going to be efficient. That doesn't mean you won't achieve things. Yes, you will achieve things, but I'm talking about you improving your functionality, improving your efficiency. If you're going to do that, you need to bring a bit of structure. So simplify things for your brain, break things down. All right, things like mind mapping, having vision boards, all of those things, charts, they help. All right, when you have complex, concepts that you want to break down, you put them into simple ways. And when you're doing that, when you create that kind of atmosphere, you will find that you'll be more productive. Your creative thinking will be much more enhanced, and you will get more results. So to summarize: hydration, oxygenation, rest, nutrition, and simplification. Well, I hope I've answered those two questions. So I'll go to the next question in the interest of time. Okay, and the next question that I will pick here is this: what's the best way to handle stress and anxiety so we don't have brain fatigue? Well, I'm not sure what your definition of brain fatigue is, whoever's sent in this question. But if you're talking about stress and anxiety, well, they are two separate things. I could just say one or two words about stress. Now, I can't exhaust stress in this Q&A session, but let me start by telling you that stress actually is very important. Stress has a positive dimension to it. Stress is really important for us to, carry out most of the things we do. Every time you wake up in the morning, there's an amount of stress hormones that are released into your body that gets you going. They get you up. They help us to be alert. So stress is important for alertness. Stress is important for us, to be, to be motivated. Stress just gets us up and gives us a bit of motivation and drive. That's really important. When there's no stress at all, there's really no motivation, there's no alertness. The problem is when the stress levels cannot be properly managed. So when stress levels cannot be properly managed, when they are, when your stress levels are higher than what your capacity is, then you'll run into trouble, because you'll be in a constant state of alertness and activation. But the body is not designed that way. Our brains are not designed to just be in a constant state of alertness and, hormonal or emotional activation. If you remain in that persistent state, then you will run into trouble. That's what often happens in people who have post-traumatic stress disorder, who have experienced trauma, but now after the trauma has been, removed, after the source of the trauma has been removed or this traumatic experience has passed, people still relive that trauma and they get into this persistent cycle of self-destruction, which is actually beyond their own capability at times, and that's because they're in a persistently high state of stress. So that is very important to understand. So being stressed may not always be a negative thing. It becomes a negative thing when it's now beyond your capacity, when you're not coping anymore. And stress can be external or internal. Stress can be conscious and unconscious. There are many dimensions to stress which I cannot sort of fully exhaust here. But let me say this, that the strategies that you can use, starting from the strategies I've talked about initially in terms of rest, hydration, oxygenation, nutrition, all right, and simplification. Those are strategies that will also help when it comes to handling stress. Sometimes your stress levels may be so high that you may need help. Sometimes you may just need some bit of counseling, a bit of encouragement. You may just need even a family member to support you, or you may need some pastoral care, whatever it is. Sometimes you may need someone to talk to just to help you walk through that journey. Because when you're under immense stress, you may not see things clearly and you may need a helping hand. You may need support from somebody. So don't be shy to talk about what you're going through with other people, all right? And don't be too shy to ask for help if you really need help, okay? And of course there are other things you can do on your own that would help you, of course you got to have time for reflection. And also so reflection is really important. I kind of emphasize that reflection is important, and there are different ways of doing reflection which I can also exhaust in this session, from journaling, writing journals, but from waking up in the morning and just writing that's a very good way. Journaling, very when you wake up in the morning, your first thought, by singing, by having a gratitude journal, maybe at night before you go to bed, just reflecting on all the good things that have happened in the day and just documenting them, just keeping a gratitude journal. And if you're a spiritual person, yes, by developing your relationship with God and having a time of real fellowship and prayer and worship, which is going to be maybe very helpful. Music, another one that can be very helpful in distressing, is meditation. Very, very important. And meditation, I find that very useful, and mindfulness, particularly the kind of Christian mindfulness, and for those who are spiritual here, that's really, really helpful, because that would mindfulness creates a state of deep relaxation while you're awake. So when you practice mindfulness, you get yourself into a state of deep relaxation even though you're awake. Now that doesn't involve chanting or or all kinds of stuff. No, you don't need to do that, but you just staying in a state of calm and deep breathing and relaxing helps you to just reduce your stress levels and can calm you down. Very important to note. If I answer that question, anxiety on the other hand is, how do I explain anxiety? Anxiety is actually a disorder. All right, anxiety is a disorder of the brain when there's a chemical imbalance in the brain that makes that alters the mood, and the different types of anxiety, which we were from phobias to OCDs to even post-traumatic stress disorder. Those are all forms of anxiety that can occur. A lot of the time, people will need some psychological help for anxiety. Sometimes you may need just the therapy of the word and prayer if you're a Christian, or you may need the support of someone else, or sometimes you may even need a bit of sometimes you may need medications if that's required. All right, so if you feel you have symptoms of anxiety, restlessness, rushing thoughts, intrusive thoughts, feeling, or maybe even you get panic attacks. You find your heart beating all fast all the time without any clear trigger, or when you hear something, you get worked up easily and you can't control yourself. You may even have physical symptoms like, as I said, heart beating fast, sweating, cold, clammy palms, shivering and tremor, all of those kind of symptoms. Yes, you may need to seek help. Oftentimes when you've got anxiety, when someone has an anxiety, they would often need help to work through the anxiety. So I'll keep it at that, so that I think in the interest of time, I'll probably just take one more question for now, and then I would go on from there. Someone said, how many hours would you recommend for sleeping? I think I've answered that question. How many hours for sleeping? I'll take one more question on this one. How can someone think creatively and tactically and also improve on this? Well, creative thinking is, I think, what this question is all about. How can you think creatively? Creative thinking is really, really good. And if you've watched, I want to refer this person to our session on the BMC, the Brain, Mind, and Change series that we ran earlier this year. And there was a session there on creativity and imagination. And when I was talking about creativity, I was talking about the way I was talking about the basis of creative thinking, which is divergent thinking, the different ways of thinking. All right. But one way you can think creatively is by practicing divergent thinking. Divergent thinking is different from the other extreme, which is convergent thinking. Convergent thinking is what most of us have learned, the way most of us have learned to think, which is what is available in our formal education. We learn to think, to reason based on what we have or the information we have, so we can get the logical answer. So it's more about logical reasoning, working out if A is equals to B, then A minus B must be zero. It's logical reasoning. And so we reason out things based on the information we have to get an answer that is already often predetermined. That is sort of the convergent thinking. So you're going from different angles to a correct answer. But usually with divergent thinking, you're not just actually thinking in that manner. You're not thinking in a way to get to a correct answer. You're actually thinking in a way that is divergent. So what you're looking for are multiple answers to the same question, or maybe you're even looking for different questions that are related to that question, and then multiple answers to all of these questions. That is what divergent thinking is about. And so people who are creative thinkers are not always bound by rules. They are not often bound by culture. They are not often bound by do's and don'ts. They are not often bound by what people think is possible. A very good example is Apple. I remember there was a time Steve Jobs, when he was alive, was interviewed, and he said in Apple, they don't do customer surveys because a lot of people don't even know what they would need. If I would tell you 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that we will have mobile devices that can connect remotely, and that I will be doing this online, I can connect to people all over the world, how would I know that? If we had done a customer survey, 15 years ago, to assess the viability of Zoom or StreamYard or some of these streaming platforms, I'm sure most of the customers would not have even thought about it. I remember those days when most of us had GPS, these Garmin GPS machines for navigation and all that. Nobody knew that today, in this day and age, most of us will have Waze or Google Maps on our phones, and we will not need, the GPSs, the navigation systems that we have. So a lot of us can just plan our trip on our mobile phones and still bank on our mobile phones and do everything. How many of us even carry cash these days? We live in a cashless society. Almost everything can be done on the phone. I'm telling you, I've got over, how many, maybe 4,000 patients in my database now, and all of them, all their data are in the cloud, and I've got access on my mobile phone. I don't need a big computer system now. I can go to work with this mobile phone, and I'll conduct my business, and see patients and get their letters and dictate new letters and do everything all on this mobile phone. But somebody thought about it. Somebody thought about it. How can we? So that's the result. This mobile phone is the result of divergent thinking. It's not just the kind of narrow thinking where we're just wanting to find an answer. No, when you think creatively, you're not looking for one answer, you're looking for multiple answers. You question the question. A creative thinker questions the question. All right. But of course, how can you be a creative thinker? There are a few things you need to understand if you're going to be a creative thinker. Creative thinkers are not narrow minded, they are open minded. So you need a level of open mindedness in order for you to be a creative thinker. You need to understand that you don't have the monopoly of knowledge, and that there's not just one way of doing things. There are many ways of doing things. There are many ways of working things out. And if you're a creative thinker, you're always thinking, well, then maybe there's another way. There's often always another way. Another way is to expand your social circle. If you work with the same kind of people and interact with the same kind of people, you're going to be like them. You're going to be like them. If we look at your top closest 4 or 5 friends, we already have an idea of who the kind of person you are. If you are going to be a creative thinker, you got to move with people who are creative thinkers. You got to not only do that, but expand your social circle. You got to be broad. You have to know a little bit of sports, a little bit of chemistry, a little bit of biology, a little bit about climate change, a bit about politics, local politics. You need to know a little bit about religion. religion, about history, world history. You need to know about the world wars. You need to know about the Olympic Games. You need to know about, the Black Lives Matter, some of the social enterprises, social causes. You need to know about the churches and the mosques. You know a little bit about Buddhism. Broad. Someone who is broad is more likely to achieve mastery in creative thinking. You also have to, as I said, be open to new opportunities, be open to new ideas, and you must be ready to challenge stereotypes. That you must be ready, willing to challenge stereotypes. Never write yourself, "Well, I can't do it," or "Yeah, because I'm from this part of the world, I can't do this," or "Because I've got this a background, I can't do this." No. Creative thinkers also engage with art, with theater, with music, all right, with things that will just stimulate that part of their brain, which is beyond the logical part of the brain. Um, some people actually believe that the left part of the brain is the analytical thinking, logical part of the brain, and the right part of the brain is the creative brain. It's not as simple as that, because we actually do know that creativity is not just encoded in the right part of the brain, it's all over. But it's true that when you are exposed to art, to music, and you get into that zone, and if you see a lot of the creatives are people who love art, they love theater, they love music. They may not be music creators, they may not be artists, but that's something that they it sort of opens their minds and open their hearts to some of these other things. All right. So those are simple ways, of thinking creatively. Remember, creative thinking is about divergent thinking. It's not about getting the right answer. It's about getting as many possible answers for that question, and understanding that sometimes 1 plus 1 may be 2 in school. All right. But oftentimes 1 plus 1 may not be 2. 1 plus 1, yes, may just not be 2. There are many ways of getting 2. It may not necessarily be 1 plus 1. You can get 2 from 4 minus 2. That's how a creative thinker thinks. Why is 1 plus 1 2? Why must it be 2? You question things. I'm not saying you now become a skeptic. I'm not saying you become a skeptic. That's not what I'm saying. But you need to be open minded to understand that the way you're brought up, your own experiences, and all of those things may not necessarily be the only way to live or to think. All right, so a bit of open-mindedness. I think I'll stop there. 26 minutes gone so far. I hope I've answered the questions. There's a lot more questions, but I will catch up with you guys again. I hope you found this of value. If you found it of value, I want you to go to the comments and say yes, you found it of value. And if this has generated more questions, yes, put the questions down there. We're compiling the questions, my team and I, and we will come back to this question. So thank you for asking these questions. Thank you for engaging with me, and I hope that I can be more and more of a blessing to you. So please go to my DM, send me a message if you have any other questions, or if there are personal issues you want us to talk about. I'll see if I can be of help to you. All right. Remember, stay safe, look after yourself, and those 5 things I shared at the beginning of this video. Hans, hydrate yourself, oxygenate yourself, have good rest, feed yourself well, and simplify things for your brain. I'll catch up with you next time. Okay, take care of yourself, and don't forget, keep swinging.